Excuse me, I had a microphone muted on OBS. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Extreme Radio, presented by GracePointe Healthcare. Go to GracePointeHealthcare.com, book your appointment online, mention 8-Man Extreme, and get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. Spencer Tomset here with James Shannon, special guest later on in the show, Travis Creasy. Isaiah Austin and Trent Legate could not make it to today's show, so we'll be manning down the fort. Kind of a full show of Skip the Sensitivity today, and we'll, of course, see how it goes from there. But it is going to be a good show today because we do have a good amount to talk about, so we'll, of course, see how that goes going forward. First thing we want to talk about, and of course, usually James just sticks to his Skip the Sensitivity portion, but he's going to be helping out today since Isaiah is off vacationing in Florida. Trent couldn't make it today, so we are
lazy bums.
Supposedly, yeah, but we've got a good amount to talk about because just in the last week from us doing our first Extreme Radio show, we've managed to do several different things. But we did miss a few things to talk about on the show last week as we had a loaded portion with our interview with Tim Pettit, as well as we had James did his first show of Extreme Talk, so we had a good amount to cover in the last week.
Holla, check it out.
Exactly, the Extreme Talk. The first episode's already up. It's fantastic, and the second episode should be coming out, I think, either this week or next week sometime. We'll see whenever that releases. First thing we need to talk about that we missed last week, we did mention it at the scheduling meeting back in February on our Twitter page, Facebook, and such, but wanted to remind everybody that for the first time in several years, I don't remember when the first time it was that they had been hosting it consistently, but for the first time in a long time, Lighthouse Christian School will not be hosting a football jamboree. So the usual schools that head there, such as Franklin Christian Academy, Franklin Classical School, sometimes Riverside, those usual South schools will not be heading to Antioch for the Jamboree, as Lighthouse has expressed they do not want to host it anymore. But the good news from that is Christian Community is the only school hosting a full football Jamboree, so as far as I know, 9 teams over the course of 2 days will be participating in that football jamboree. That will be spread out over Friday and Saturday. But James, we look at how Christian Community is hosting all these teams. For the South teams that are going up, they have to travel a lot more distance than from just, Franklin to Antioch. They have to travel up from Franklin to White House. So it's more of a travel for them. But what'll be really interesting is this will be the first time for the majority of the South schools that they will be hosted at a jamboree. Not only the first time of being hosted by Christian Community, but this will be the first time that they're playing more North teams in that jamboree. So it's going to be really great to see them, get their initial players. It'll be really good to see them getting their initial players and such, work out the kinks, practice some football and such. But how much more of a difference is it for them to play North teams in the Jamboree than just the South?
Well, there's a lot of teams that, there's a lot of teams, first off, that aren't going to get to participate in it, whether they start their practice a little bit later or, maybe they just decide not to participate in it for school reasons. But I think the South getting to play the North, and the last time I looked at the schedule, you actually had quite a few North teams playing each other on Friday, and then most of your South, I think all your South teams are playing on Saturday with a mixture of some North. So it's going to be good for them to get to play each other, mainly for the reason that it just gives you a chance to compete against somebody that you might not get to during the season. Of course, you're going to be very familiar with the teams in your division, but it gives you a chance to branch out. And for us, it gives us a chance to see potentially like a Lancaster Christian and CCS who I've only played once with an 11-man game several years ago. So it gives us a chance to see some matchups that we might not get to see for several seasons, and that's kind of what the Jamboree gives you in that regard. But you also mentioned Lighthouse not doing it. I think Lighthouse, I know they were doing it back in 2011. So it's been several years that they've hosted it, and just a change in situation, and they've decided not to. But that's it really is all the better for CCS, because it gives them the opportunity to host more teams, and it's really good too for the community, because when you're bringing a lot of people up into town for a jamboree that could last 3 hours, 4 hours, and people are getting up into town a little earlier, it might not be a huge impact, but it does give it a little bit of a economic impact to the restaurants there in the community. And if they decide to sell concessions, then they can boost concessions a little bit, having that massive influx of people come in for the jamboree.
Yeah, for certain. That's what we do with the All-Star game as well, is helping the local community, especially Taco Bell, but helping the local community.
Yeah, we help Taco Bell and Little Caesars quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, we helped both of them
and the local Walmart.
Oh, yeah, the Walmart for sure. One of the other things that we announced this past week for the Jamboree that's happening at noon on August the 4th on our Facebook page that James managed to coordinate, and we're really excited about this one, is the first time that we're having a coaches forum, the 2018 Extreme Coaches Forum, and we're going to be sitting down with coaches from across Tennessee and Kentucky 8-man football, asking them specific questions on their experiences, their thoughts, players, just any of those types of questions. And any audience that is present will be able to ask questions of the coaches that they may not have been able to ask them before. So, to get great insight from the coaches is going to be really fantastic. Right now on that, we have confirmed the coaches from the following schools: Seth Witherington from Franklin Classical, Steve Adams from Franklin Christian Academy, Ryan Scott from the Tennessee Heat, Jason Zimmerman from the South Haven Christian School, Travis Creasy from Riverside Christian Academy. We'll talk to him later on the show. Jordan Flanders from Christian Community, of course, and I haven't caught the name of the new coach, or the coach for Lancaster Christian Academy's football program, which I'm sure James will mention in a second, but he will be present as well. And we're trying to confirm some other coaches as well. There were some that unfortunately had to decline due to pre-existing conflicts and everything. So unfortunately, we some of them aren't able to make it, but that's okay, because we'll still have a great amount of coaches to ask questions to and get their opinions. A good mixture of coaches from the North and South, and we're really excited to be hosting that. And we'll of course be broadcasting that coaches forum here on our YouTube channel. But James, I know we've always thought about doing something like this. Maybe not just we have thought about doing this with more on the players' side, because sometimes they enjoy giving questions, but it's especially great to ask the coaches because of several of them having their extensive experience in 8-man football, as well as their experiences with the schools in the conference and associating with the other coaches. So it's a really great event for anybody to come in person to see, to get on the live stream and everything. But just tell us how that idea came about, how we finally managed to get something like that coordinated.
Well, first off, the head coach for Lancaster Christian is a guy by the name of Jason Bragg. It's his first year being the head coach for Lancaster, and I've talked to him several times. He's a great guy. I think the other coaches are really going to enjoy getting to know him. I know some of them got to meet him at the scheduling meeting back in February, like we did, but this is really huge, and the reason being because this is the perfect setting to do this in. we typically it's hard to get a bunch of coaches together just because of life and different situations going on. But I first reached out to the coaches. I think it was earlier on this week, and just threw the idea at them that several of them are coming up to the Jamboree. Coming up for the Jamboree on Saturday, some on Friday. Even if you're not participating where you play on Friday, you either live close enough or you have enough drive to want to come in and watch the Jamboree that night. And a lot of teams do scouting at the Jamboree, even if you're not participating in it. It's a great, now obviously not every team is going to show everything, but you get a kind of an idea of some of the players. And so that can kind of work to the coach's advantage. And then, I approach them from the perspective of, hey, listen, since you're already going to be in town, would you be interested in kind of getting this up and going and participating in this? And so far, 7 coaches have been fantastic. There's a couple coaches that can't make it, and then a couple that we're waiting to hear back on. But I'm really excited about this and the fact that it came together. We're all about first here at 8-Man Extreme, and this is obviously just another first that we were able to put together. It's a lot to do with the coaches and the coaches being very generous with their time and agreeing to do this. But the reason I had a drive to do this was because, well, there's 2 reasons. I'm trying to think of myself as a parent, because I am a parent, and I know one day my son will be playing football, and if he wants to play football, but I know my son will be playing football, and I want to know the coach who's going to be leading young men and leading another team against my son and his teammates and his coach. I want to know that it's not a guy who is a win at all costs, hurt the other kid, because I've known coaches like that, and I've heard of coaches like that. And I want to know that that's not how this opposing coach is going to be. And so I think it's going to be huge for folks to be able to talk to coaches and get to know them. I think it's going to be huge for some rivalries and just where maybe coaches are misunderstood, or they have a perception about them, either whether it's from people or from another coach. A lot of coaches don't know each other. Like I just mentioned, Lancaster has a new first-year coach. Webb has a new first-year coach. So a lot of these coaches don't know each other, and this is going to be the perfect opportunity for them to talk and get to know each other. Obviously, we'll have questions we'll ask them, and like you said, we'll let the audience ask some questions. And I really wanted it to be a great time of everyone getting to know one another, because I truly believe that that's something that's lacking, not just in society, but even just in our little niche of 8-man football, is people getting to know each other and getting to realize that hey, this person puts on their shirt and pants the same way. They eat Cocoa Puffs just like me. Now they may use different types of milk, but they eat Cocoa Puffs just like me. And it's so imperative to get to know people from across the aisle and from other places, and to get that understanding with them, because once you do that, that cuts down on the amount of problems, in my opinion, that you will have even throughout the season, even if a hairy situation comes up, because the other coach, or of the other coach and know the other people that are on the other sideline. I think that helps cut down on the number of situations that then the league or the school has to turn around and deal with on their end, because someone acted up because they don't know the other person and they have this perception about them. So that's kind of the whole reason that I wanted to get this up and going. It just seemed like the perfect timing. And like I said, these coaches that have agreed to come have been fantastic. They're so generous with their time, and I'm really, really excited about seeing this happen.
I know it was meant to be an analogy, but eating the same Cocoa Puffs, really?
I say that because I ate a bowl of Cocoa Puffs at like 12 last night, so it was fresh on my mind.
You're eating Cocoa Puffs at midnight? Man, look.
Have you never had a midnight snack?
I have.
Great. Now you haven't been. For those of y'all that didn't hear before the show, we had a discussion about the Harry and the Biscuit, and so Spencer has now not had a Harry and a Biscuit or a bowl of Cocoa Puffs at midnight. What kind of life do you live, man?
I mean,
Gosh.
look, I've had cereals late at night, but I've never had Cocoa Puffs specifically at midnight. Well, I haven't had Cocoa Puffs in several years because I just don't eat much.
See, you're missing out right there.
You're right. I am missing out. It's because
Let me guess. You drink almond milk with your
no,
Cocoa
actually,
Puffs?
no. I do drink organic milk. I will confess to that. And
Loser.
let me tell you, once you drink organic milk for several times, and then you try to go back to regular milk, you want organic milk. Not, I mean, it is more
Now,
pricey.
see, your version of organic milk is from a store for $6. My version is straight from the cow into a pail, stick it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, and then pour it over your cereal. That's organic to me, and I've had organic, and that is the best.
Okay, yeah. The organic milk I'm
especially
talking about
especially when it's brown, when it's chocolate milk straight from the cow and then onto your cereal.
Chocolate milk straight from the cow, yeah, because the brown cows, right? They come from the brown cows.
Well, there's brown and white, and God loves them all.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, try not to get too off topic here.
Hey, listen, we are on about bunny trails here. We care about our bunnies, and we will get on trails to track them down. Exactly. No, but for real, getting back to topic, I do want to give a big thank you also to Jordan Flanders over at CCS, and not just for participating, but for he was the first person I reached out. And obviously with the Jamboree being at CCS, they're going to be super busy that day and on Friday as well. And I think they have a fundraiser on Sunday. So 3 days of activities. And I still reached out to him and asked about hosting it there. And he was able to make that happen. So a huge thank you to Jordan and to CCS. I'm not a homer in any way, shape, or form, but I love the place that I was able to play football at. And I'm super excited about getting to return and host this first time ever event. It's huge.
Yeah,
it's real huge.
There are so many. We thank them all the time because their kindness shows so prevalently throughout the season, throughout what we do and everything. We thank the coaches 100% and they well deserve the thank yous. But I'm probably going to say this about every single coach you ask me about. But Flanders, he's a fantastic guy. Not just for hosting the coaches forum for us, but just the amount of conversations I've had with him on and off camera, conversations you've had with him on and off camera and such. But Flanders is just a great guy, and that just. Like you said, with them doing a Jamboree 2 days in a row, fundraiser on Sunday, and for them to take on that coaches forum, I mean, it just shows more to his character and how great of a guy Flanders is. So kudos to him. I'm hoping we get him for an interview either during the season or sometime maybe beforehand, depending on what our.
I don't think he's going to have an option as much as you're buttering him up.
I'll butter up any of the coaches I damn want to, man.
That's true.
I'll butter up any of the coaches. We do that all the time. What are you talking about, man?
Come on. I don't butter coaches up.
Yeah, you do. You do plenty of times, man. You butter up pretty much any of the coaches or anybody who's doing anything for us. We all butter them up. Now,
so we've covered milk, chocolate milk, Cocoa Puffs, butter, and biscuits on the show. We're on a roll, and we're also hungry. And now we've talked about rolls. Anyways, back on topic.
Yeah, we've also covered hairs for sure. But seriously, on the focus, of course. This coaches forum, we're excited for it. We're going to be broadcasting it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't come in person. If you're in the area, if you're in Springfield or White House or even in the Franklin area, I mean, you could still come up and come in person.
Even if you're in Fayetteville.
Yeah, even Fayetteville. Heck, I mean, even if you're from from Sacred Heart or you're from Bowling Green, you should come down for this coaches forum because it's going to be fantastic event to see the coaches that your kids are going to be going up against or the coaches that your kids are going to be playing for. So it's going to be a great event. That's at noon Central Time, August 4th. That's a Saturday prior to the football Jamboree. Now, it's the same thing as last year. we won't be broadcasting the football jamboree, even though it's in the same place. Mostly because the reason we don't broadcast the jamborees is because we're just like the rest of the coaches. We're looking at the players. We're looking to see who's going to be going forth as the best players going into the season. Also, those who are ready to build themselves up and go for improvement. So we normally don't broadcast the jamborees just because of the amount of hassle it would take to broadcast every single thing of it. But more importantly, it's a matter of going around to folks and such, promoting eight man extreme and everything. But it's the same as last year. We won't be broadcasting the jamboree. Same as last year. We won't be handling the jamboree broadcast, but we will be present. So if you see a guy in a Extreme All-Star Game shirt or wearing the 8 logo on his chest and with his wife, make sure you say hi to him for 8-Man Extreme. But,
or if we can get one of our many new shirts that I covered on Extreme Talk, if we can get those printed, you might see us walking around in one of those.
Yeah, one of the new shirts. If we can get them printed before then, I'm sure that we'll get something from 615 Sports. We'll see if they can do something like that. But of course, with the coaches forum, James talked about clarity. Talked about knowing the character of the coaches and knowing that they're not just some aggressive people at all costs. And part of the game of football, whether we accept them or not, or whether or not we agree with them all the time, is the officiating. The officials of not just MTAC, but primarily most of the officials in MTAC are TSSAA primarily, and they're just assigned to MTAC games. But I recently had a conversation with officiating coordinator, and he's one of the county clerks for, I want to say Nashville, or I want to say maybe for Williamson. But he's a county clerk somewhere, and I'm pretty sure he works out of Nashville. But the guy's name is Ronnie Perkins. He does the officiating assignments for the majority of the schools in MTAC, aside from the new ones, Lancaster, Sacred Heart, Bowling Green, and I think there was one more that I was missing. May have been Lighthouse. But he does the officiating coordinating for the majority of MTAC. And we had a phone conversation with him because if you didn't catch James's Instagram story post for 8-Man Extreme, we met to test out the new broadcast equipment we got. We've got several different things. One of the big things we got is a lapel mic. And for our broadcasts, we are planning to use that lapel mic to hook it to the main referee so that you as fans who are watching the game, or if you're in stadium and there's a PA system, it's so you guys can hear what the call is on the field.
We're literally going to hook them up.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to quite literally hook them up with a lapel mic so that those who are watching in stadium and through YouTube, what the call is on the field. If there's a situation that's being cleared up, I would hope this would happen, but I would hope if there's a situation on the field that needs clearing up, the referee can just turn on his mic, explain it to the fans, because constantly, at least not just in MTAC, it happens all over in high school sports because it's really varying on whether or not there are lapel mics. But in high school sports specifically, there's a call on the field, some penalty, some motion, you may not know what's going on, and you're left until either asking the coach after the game or you are asking one of the PA announcers or something about what a call is on the field. So to eliminate that, we're giving the referees a voice. We're making sure that we're hoping to help provide clarity and consistency through our broadcasts, not just for the fans, but of course for us in the booth, making sure we know what the penalty call is. So I had a conversation, as I was saying, with Ronnie Perkins, who's the officiating coordinator, and he said he's basically ready to go. Their referees are ready to go, and that he himself as a referee has used the lapel mic before, so it's not that not foreign to him, and he's passed on that information to the officials he assigns. So we're proud to say that for all of the at least not all of them, because we still have to try and get in contact with the officiating coordinators for the schools that he doesn't cover. But for the majority of our broadcast this season, we will proudly be giving the referees a voice so that whether or not you agree with the call, you at least know what the call on the field is. Not only that, but there is a clinic or conference that is going to be set up sometime next month. Nothing is 100% confirmed yet, but Mr. Perkins is trying to get the coaches and athletic directors together in one room so that he could talk to them about rule changes, just officiating in general, to help them understand, what the officials expect, what the league wants, and just going forward to the amount of mutual respect that's for coach to referee and referee to coach. I'll be present at that whenever they officially confirm the date and time for it. But I think that's a great move. I think it's fantastic to get somebody who's on the officiating side to just give clarity to the coaches and to the athletic directors of what step they're going to take in the right direction. I think that's fantastic. And I think with us getting this lapel mic to the referees, I think this is just going to make it even better. And like James said, we're a first. We're all about first here at 8-Man Extreme. So this will be, to my knowledge, this will be the first 8-man football game where the referee has a lapel mic. I'm sure I'm wrong about that since it's Texas. Since Texas is big on it, but I know I could confidently say we'll be the first 8-man football game in Tennessee where the referee has a lapel mic. So I'm excited about that, and I'm sure James is really excited about it. I'm sure he's more looking forward to that officiating conference so there's clarity. But, James, this is just officiating in general. Any way we can improve 8-man football to get it to the same recognition as 11-man. This is just one of the many steps that we're helping to aid in that 8 equals 11 movement.
I'm very excited about this, and I'll tell you that I've seen on more than one occasion the whole misunderstanding from official to crowd situation happen, and even if a crowd does not agree with what the official calls, as long as they know what he calls, they can kind of go from there. But when they're trying to speculate and they don't understand what he called, I think that creates a whole new level. Again, it goes back to the whole people knowing the other coach and other coaches. Every time that you get more and more communication, relations get better, and I think that people should act professional and act like adults in any way. But I think the more information you have, the easier it is to act like that. I love hearing what Ronnie Perkins is trying to do, and how open he is to everything. I think it's fantastic, and I hope we can get a hold of officiating coordinators for other schools, because I've heard on more than one occasion of not just referees and fans going at it, but you have a referee and a coach, and let's say you have a coach that asks for an explanation on something, referee doesn't want to give it, and he does the classic one more word and you're going to get a penalty, or one more word and you're gone, and the coach says okay, and there you go. So, I think it's very imperative to get everyone on the same playing field, on the same level, because even if you talk before a game, and I know all head coaches talk to all the officials before the game. I've seen it thousands of times. I know that still happens, but there's still misunderstandings. There's still problems. So the more you can do to get rid of those problems, the better. But I'm excited that we were able to get the lapel mic, and that people are open to putting it on the officials. and that we can get it piped into the PA system, get it into our broadcasts. And, I think it's just the more openness you can have, the better.
Yeah, we're always about openness with 8-Man Extreme, and I'm sure that MTAC as a whole would agree or would reflect our statements as well. Not just MTAC, but any of the teams, any of the conferences that we go forward with, they would reflect that message as well of their for openness as well as clarity and consistency. And one of the cool things that we'll be doing is, if the officials request it, we can, with what we're doing, we had last year when we were at Riverside Franklin Christian game, we were on the field about to record the coin toss, and we told the head referee what we were doing and just giving him a rundown and such, making sure he was okay with us getting the coin toss recorded. And he asked us to if we could give them a playback link, since the officials don't have much of a chance to review themselves and critique themselves. And, for me at least, I can't speak for James, but for me at least, that was a revealing moment that we are more than just a gateway to for families to view into their kids' lives. We're more than just a gateway to give more attention to 8-man football and have it on the same level as 11-man, but we're also a gateway for referees to improve, for officiating to improve, and not make it so that some practices that officials may do, they may not catch them until college or such when they're being critiqued by their officiating supervisor, and they have actual film evidence to back it up. So now, suffice to say, that official we talked to at Riverside, he never messaged us on Facebook. He never contacted us and such. But if he did, we would have sent him the film 100%. But that's one of the great things that we'll also be helping with. And I'm sure I'll be talking more with Mr. Perkins about it. But we'll be able to send that footage to the referees there so that they can review themselves and see if they were in the correct position for a call, if whatever call they made was questionable, if there was something that could be taken back, but gives them a critique of themselves so that they're able to improve not just in their craft, but improve to where it's not as many coaches yelling at them. I mean, the truth is, regardless of, you could put as many microphones on a referee as you want to, and you can give them as much of a voice as you want to, but they'll always get yelled at. There'll always be fans who don't agree with the call, and there will be times where the officials do genuinely get it wrong. So with what we're doing, it's more of a way to help improve that, because we understand fully well, and I'm sure the referees understand fully well when they get into the business, is that they will screw up at one point. They'll get a call wrong. And it's just a matter of them being able to review and go back and build off of those mistakes and improve to be better officials, not just for themselves, but for the whole rest of the league and for all of high school sports they officiate going forward. So we're excited about it. I can't wait to go to that officiating conference to hear what he has to say whenever they actually plan that. Of course, if I'm admitted to it, I'm sure that they won't have an issue with me going there. But it's going to be a really great season for officiating, at least in the games we broadcast, and especially the playoffs. At least one of those two semi-playoffs will have a referee with a lapel mic. But more importantly, the consolation game and championship. Imagine how much better that's going to be for clarity for everybody. With the head referee during the high stakes championship game. That's going to be fantastic. And I don't know if the championship is going to be hosted at Webb, but if it is, we can just run a cable down to them and we can just link a cable down to their sound system, and they'll be able to play it on the full PA system. And the majority of the schools do have the ability of sound system. So it'll be great going forward. But enough about officiating, because we got one more thing to cover before we interview Mr. Creasy. This is a big thing we forgot to mention last week, and it shows not just the impact that we can have, but it also shows the impact that those who are I'm failing to find a better word for this, but those who are different than the average can show that they are just as good at the average in athletics. In 8-man football, the Tennessee School for the Deaf is returning. They had to take an off season in 2017, as they did not have enough players to field a full 8-man team, or at least they didn't have any. They didn't even have enough to field 8 people. It was only I think 5 or 6, but this year they have enough, and they're back. We've got their schedule. One thing I do want to let you guys know about, James and I had a good conversation this past week. We had a long, good conversation last week about which games we were going to cover, which games we're going to. We're going to reveal our broadcast schedule week by week of which games we're going to. We're not going to put it on the helmet schedule like we did last year and then have it changed tentatively. But we have confirmed our broadcast schedule for this season, at least through until what we call Rivalry Week, or as some people call it, Rivalry Week. We have confirmed our schedule for it, and we have 2 games that we're covering for Tennessee School for the Deaf, and we're really excited for it. I can personally say, unfortunately, I will only be able to broadcast one of those 2 games because I have a pre-existing commitment on one of the days of Tennessee School for the Deaf's games. But back in 2016, I think it was the second game, maybe, or third game that I called with James. It was probably second.
I think it was our first.
No, the first one was Lighthouse, and it was Lighthouse.
No,
and that other one. Yeah.
You're right, because I had to leave early.
Yeah,
because my wife had a medical emergency, and I kind of bailed on you in your first broadcast. You're right.
Yeah, so it was my second game, and we were awake at I want to say about 8 a.m. Nashville time, and we left from Nashville. Drove out. I think it was 3.5 hours, maybe less. But we drove out all the way to Knoxville and called that game with I think it was Mississippi School for the Deaf, or may have been.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Mississippi School for the Deaf, and for me, it was one of those. It was one of those moments when your whole perspective is shook in a good way, because I had never been around an environment where there were people, at least people all around me, using sign language, or people, using. I still haven't been in an environment where people use Braille, or trying to remember what the method was of teaching for how Helen Keller communicated. I don't remember the specific thing for that. I want to say it was Braille.
I think it was Braille.
Yeah, but I had never been in an environment where everyone was using sign language to communicate, and some people having to mumble just a little bit to get their message across and such. But it was one of those really good moments for me of changing my perspective. Earth shaking is the phrase that comes to mind, because to see not just amazing football. It was a great game. It was a blowout, but it was still a great game, because to see the athletic abilities of athletes who are hearing impaired it was amazing. And I am going to be really looking forward to when I broadcast their game. Not going to reveal which one it is I'll be at or which ones are broadcasting, because that's a week by week basis. But I'm really looking forward to seeing them broadcast a second game, or seeing a second game to broadcast for the Tennessee School for the Deaf. And I know that James fully well can give his I mean, I can't speak for him, but I know for a fact that James loves the athletic ability. To see the athletic ability for TSD, the Vikings. But I know fully well that we both had a really great time broadcasting that game when we did back in 2016.
We had a great time broadcasting that game, and we had a great time driving out there and driving back, just because we hadn't really gotten a chance to talk a whole lot. So we really got to know each other. And for those who are wondering, that's kind of where this whole friendship took off from, was specifically that trip. And it's hilarious, not hilarious, but it's coincidental that we're talking about this, because I'm wearing our Tennessee School for the Deaf shirt that we got very generously when we were at that game. We actually finished the game, and Luke Benson, the athletic director, came up to us and told us to run down to the concession stand and grab a free shirt. And I am wearing that shirt today, so very proudly. I'm also wearing CCS Colt shorts and Hendersonville Christian Academy hat, so I'm representing 3 schools. But that was actually my 3rd game for Tennessee School for the Deaf I'd gotten to watch. I got to see them against St. Andrew Sewanee way back. I think it was 2014, way back in the day. And they used to have a good rivalry with them, dating back to the days that they both played 11-man. And then I also got to see, it wasn't Tennessee School for the Deaf. It was actually Mississippi School for the Deaf. And they played the Memphis Nighthawks. And that was also the 2014 season. I want to say that was closer to October, I believe, because I was actually, as messed up as it is, that was actually part of my honeymoon. Was my wife and I, we left out of Nashville. We went down to Jackson for a Thursday night game. It was Sacred Heart CCS. Went down to the Duck Dynasty place in Louisiana on Friday. And then on Saturday, we stopped back through Mississippi, saw Memphis Nighthawks and Mississippi School for the Deaf there in Jackson, Mississippi, and then drove back up through Alabama. So that was my 3rd chance to get to see
football. Do you?
Do what?
You never give your wife a break from football, do you?
Not really. She really doesn't. She doesn't really get a break, and she doesn't really want one. I mean, she kind of enjoys it right there with me, as long as I take her to games. But it's such a great experience, and even when we're not broadcasting the games, because I know 2 years ago they broadcasted live on a platform called Cube, and some schools have used it. But they would broadcast their games, and I would still watch their games on the Cube, because they would play North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, just different schools for the deaf. And I love taking it in, because while usually it's one of the quietest games you'll be at, it's not quiet. They'll have the cheering, and they might have a band or something like that. There's nothing really from the PA system, but those guys get so jacked up, and it's awesome to see young men, young teenagers, and the passion they have for football. It's almost like we're passionate about 8-man football, and that it's just the same as 11-man. And this is a great comparison also, that these kids playing for Tennessee School for the Deaf, Mississippi School for the Deaf, football is football no matter what. It's not flag football, it's not touch football, it's not Saturday afternoon rec league football. This is legitimate, pads on, we're going to hit you in your mouth football. And Tennessee School for the Deaf, they had a kid go play at a college. It's actually a college just for deaf. Gallaudet University, rather. It's university or college. It's up near Washington, D.C. It's in Maryland. And a lot of deaf athletes go to that college. And Tennessee School for the Deaf has sent several kids to that school in different sports and just to go there in general. But they had I want to say his name is Rashard Witherspoon, and he actually headed up there to play for Gallaudet. And I got a chance to see him play several years ago. But it's such a unique experience, and they're coming to play Tennessee Heat on October 18th. It's the night before rivalry night. Spencer, I know you don't want to leak any of it, but we will be there broadcasting that game. One of us will be there.
Dang it, man!
And
I hid myself from saying that one, man. Come on. Yeah, we
I'll
can
give
reveal
it away. I'll reveal that one. But that's one of those days that even if I'm there not there broadcasting it, I'm going to be there watching that game because it's a totally different environment. And I'm so glad the Tennessee Heat were able to get that game scheduled. And I know they're kind of the closest. Well, Swanee's technically the closest, but I'm glad they got that game scheduled with Tennessee School for the Deaf. And if you have the chance to go catch that game, it's October 18th. It's at Mount Juliet Christian Academy where the Tennessee Heat play their home games. It's such a unique experience, and I really, really hope that you guys make the time to go out there and watch that game, even if you have practice that day. Move practice around or do something different, but make sure you make it to that game because it is a life-changing experience, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to it.
Yep. We will be broadcasting that game. That's on a Thursday, where Tennessee School for the Deaf is being hosted by Tennessee Heat. We are very excited to broadcast that one. I'll be there. And that'll be the only game going on that night since it's a Thursday. And we'll be
Thursday night football, baby.
Yep. We're proud to be doing Thursday night football games this year. Not a lot of schools, unfortunately, decided to do Thursday night games this year because I know the jury is still out on whether or not that's enough rest for their players or not. But we're really excited to do some Thursday night games.
You could look at that. You could look at that as the same way as some people look at, some teams having to play on a Saturday and then turn around and play on a Friday. I mean, it's the same amount of rest. Some teams it's necessary, but it's something that happens.
Yep, it's something to be talked about. Of course, I guess it's just NFL players have more of an issue with it than high school football players do. But Thursday night, that's the last week of the regular season. We'll be guaranteed broadcasting the Tennessee Heat hosting Tennessee School for the Deaf. So we're really, really excited to get to that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now to the interview portion of our show. It's always a joy for us to have guests on the show, and we're really, really excited to have this one on the show. It's Mr. Travis Creasy, the head coach. Mr. Dr. Professor Coach Travis Creasy, head coach for the Riverside Christian Academy Knights. Creasy, how's it going in Fayetteville right now?
Man, it's nice, cool breeze. The football guys probably wish they were practicing today, but it's pretty good.
Yeah, we get the Tennessee weather right now. It was supposedly predicted to storm a bunch and it only rained for a few hours over the night, but right now it's mostly cloudy skies. So we're probably going to get the rain that's coming through in the next few days. Probably it'll hit Fayetteville first. I'm not sure.
That's your weather broadcast now for traffic.
Yep. Go on to traffic and now sports. So
get the helicopter nose going.
Yeah. So you guys have started your football camp, as you mentioned. Most of the schools have been starting that around. Can you give us a kind of update on what you guys have been doing at your camps? What kind of training you guys have been doing with them, and just kind of give us an update on what's going on with your guys' football camp.
Well, we've been going. We've really been lifting and working out and running since the end of May. We do half of really conditioning, but it's football related type stuff. We actually line up in our offensive defense. So we have offense, defense, special teams days. So the first half we go 5:30 to 7 in the evenings, and we'll do some football related conditioning. And then we've mainly focused on doing some CrossFit stuff, just trying to get mentally tougher and stronger as we go along. Started off in the weight room, but kind of got to the point where we felt like, the upping the intensity a little bit. It was a little sterile, I guess you might say, if you use that word. for the weight room. So we kind of moved everything outside, flipping tires, kettlebell type stuff, and just trying to grow mentally tough. We'll be kind of in that young age group again, kind of like we were last year. So we've been trying to kind of build some mental toughness as we go along.
I got to be honest with you, man. I know fully well I need to get more in shape. I need to work out, but I hate CrossFit. I feel sorry for those guys, man. In high school, we had a thing at our high school called Fantastic Friday, which is where each of the grades were taken out for a day to do various activities and such. And we were assigned our women's basketball coach, who's also a Bible teacher and taught wellness class. And she decided to take us, this was sophomore year, she decided to take our grade to a CrossFit gym. And the soreness I had the next day that everybody was complaining about the next day, it was worth the pain, but it was just one of those, I just feel...
Typical soccer player.
Don't you be dogging on soccer, man. Soccer is more moving and more activity than football is in a full 90 minutes, man.
The only working out y'all do is practice flopping.
We go for longer in soccer than you do in football, though. We go a full 45 minutes without stopping.
Yeah, okay.
Just saying. But anyway, so I will ask you this. At the football camp, since you guys have been doing CrossFit, but you've at least been having some days that you've been doing offense, defense, such. You mentioned that you're a young team going into the season. Which players are you really looking forward to see play their first game going into the season? Which ones are you really looking forward to come up and become Riverside stars?
Well, we've got a few guys, and then we've got some guys that are kind of will come into football practice a little banged up. Riley Pupp's got some knee issues. Hopefully, get some more news on him. But you got those guys who aren't, I wouldn't necessarily call backups, but they're guys who are going to step in, take more role. You got a Crutcher Ezel who had a monster year last year as a freshman with JV. I see his role really being big as a sophomore. Really, the sophomore group in general is just going to have to step up and Harold Canada is a guy that's going to play a lot up front, and he's going to have to fill some space that maybe some guys we hadn't talked about before. Levi Ogle is going to have to play, be kind of forced into action, playing. A lot of the guys who think that maybe last year they would play a specific position and stay there, we got a lot of guys moving around, a lot of moving parts. So I'm excited. With the season we had last year, you're always ready to kind of get the ball rolling and see what you got and where you've improved, where you got to get better. And of course, we kick off the season with James's boys, the Big Bear in the Woods, the defending national champions. And, you get to that point where you're excited, challenge, to see
the conference.
See where you're at, and the measuring stick is community, those guys, and they have been for a long time. And Coach Flanders always got top-notch program. So, and I tell them the Big Bear in the Woods, we'll get to find out real quick.
Yeah, we'll see if the big bear in the woods can potentially survive walking by the river. We'll see what we can do on that one.
Fun fact.
Yeah, exactly.
Riverside has not been to CCS since 2013 in their first 8-man game when they got spanked. That is all.
Yeah. That was one where I almost thought we might have made a mistake coming from 11-man to 8-man. I was like, I don't know if it's going to be any better, but
you guys then went on to be Division II champions, or then Division II for MTAC. So you've at least had some success with 8-man football.
Yeah, I think we started off the first 2 weeks in 8-man. We played the Tennessee state champs and we played the Alabama state champs right out the gate in 8-man. And so we were kind of like, okay, readjust. And, the season turned out well, but it's been a good fit. And, you take your butt whippings and like y'all talked about, there's some coaches out there that might be all about winning. And I know Coach Flanders not that way. So, when you play guys like that, and occasionally you're going to take a butt whipping, but that they're good men and you just know who you're going against and you better be ready.
Exactly. Speaking of being ready, Riverside had 4 seniors graduate from the class of 2018. Those being Adam Hamilton, Nathan Klein, Marshall Steelman, and Colton Thornton. So you lost those
Yes.
guys from last year. Obviously, those are big holes to fill. I mean, any seniors you lose are arguably big holes to fill because of the leadership they bring. Have you been giving a message to your to those underclassmen or rising seniors and such that this is your time? This is the time for you to step up and take the leadership that your older classmen have once had.
Yeah, you get guys who, you coach long enough, you get guys who complain about playing time, and that won't be an issue this year. That's what I keep telling them. And last year, I think where we struggled, we really never had somebody who verbally took the reins. Those guys are all excellent leaders, but they're not guys you would look at and go, "Oh, those are vocal guys." They lead by example, which is important. But I think this year we're kind of developing and massaging those guys to step up and say things when they need to be said. And that's kind of, as a culture, gets to a point where, not only are you doing what you need to do, but you're also encouraging, lifting up, and admonishing, if I can use a preacher term, those guys around you. And I think John Trahan he's our only returning senior, but y'all know what kind of player he is, and he's been training hard. And if you believe it or not, he's actually gotten stronger and more conditioned. So, we look forward to him. He's always been a guy who led by example. And so we're just encouraging him to be a guy who's going to step in and be a little more vocal leader. And then we've got some younger guys that, as you mentioned, will have to. It's kind of one of those deals where they can't look around at somebody else to do it anymore. They've got to be those guys.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to see what John Trahan and the rest of your squad do for this season. So I'm looking at your schedule right now. So August 17th, you guys are at Christian Community. You start out the season 2 games on the road. You go to Christian Community up in White House. Then you go to Classical in Franklin. Then you host Swanee, host Lancaster. So you guys, the farthest you're going to travel this season throughout your schedule is to Bowling Green. But you guys are hosting schools like Webb. You're going to Franklin Christian, hosting Tennessee Heat. But you guys get to host Sacred Heart this year. How thankful are you guys you don't have to make that long haul out to Jackson?
Well, I'm on the board, and I was a proponent of scheduling them. And I just kind of sat down and I told them, I said, I don't mind playing those cats, but there's no way that I can making 2 trips like that in a year. I said, I don't have any problem going out there next year. And I'd already, Coach Brown and I are real close friends. I don't know if we can say close because of the distance, but I really like Coach Brown, and they came down to us to end the season last year. And we had already committed to make that trip. And, I appreciate Coach Flanders and his being involved in getting scheduled and get Sacred Heart hammered out and back where they need to be. And I'm very thankful. But it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, there's no way I can make that sell.
Yeah, that'll be a great thing to pitch your headmaster. Hey, we're going to need gas money for Jackson, Tennessee, there and back again.
1 and 9 is bad on itself, but to come in and tell my parents, hey, I got to go to Bowling Green, we got to go to Jackson, that might be too much. They might be ready to run me out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, thank you for coming in to let us interview you. We're really looking forward to what Riverside has to offer for the 2018 8-man football season, and hopefully we'll see you guys get at least a 500 record.
Well, we think we could come out and shock some folks. We were really close in a lot of games last year, and we just didn't finish. And just to be honest, and that's not me making excuses, we just did not finish. We didn't make the plays we need to make. So, I think we've got a great chance to shake up some stuff, and we're certainly not going to stay down on the mat. We're going to get up and fight. And, you guys hopefully will be ringside.
Yeah, we'll be ringside for a few of those Riverside games. We're looking forward to them. Thanks again for coming on, Coach. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Y'all take it easy.
You too. Well, that was Travis Creasy, the head coach for the Riverside Christian Academy Knights. Always a pleasure to have him and any of the other coaches on our show. Now we get to the official portion segment of Skip the Sensitivity. It was unofficially beforehand because of James having to sub in, but it's time for Skip the Sensitivity. Once again, all 100% James Shannon's opinions, not reflective of 8-Man Extreme necessarily, but all of James' unbridled opinions, as we term that word on there. So James, first question I'm gonna hit towards you is the MTAC division placements, because we obviously talked about it a little bit on the show last year. We've talked last week. We've also talked about it off camera about our opinions on it. But the North and South divisions, how do you think the team should be placed in that, or do you think it should just be one big conference, or what do you think? So division placements, or one big conference, or how do you think the team should be arranged?
Well, that is an interesting question. I think the conference has to relook at it next year. Obviously we heard from Tim Pettit last week and kind of explaining about them trying to keep it equal, that, the MTAC North, to some people, it's kind of close, with you having White House and Springfield, and then Bowling Green's just 45 minutes up the road or an hour up the road. And, all they have to do is go down to Lighthouse or over to, everyone says the North is kind of close together, and then the South is a little more spread out. And that's why Sacred Heart was assigned to this. Not why they were assigned to the North, but that could potentially be the reason that they stay in the North. I do not agree with that at all, and I don't think that it'll ever change. I don't think you go to one big open conference, because while no one's ever going to play everybody, I think it makes it easier to kind of go based off of conference record or division record to split up rankings and standings. I think if you go to one big conference, it's going to be a jumbled mess. So I like the divisions. I think Sacred Heart does need to go to the South. I think Lancaster does need to come to the North, because you don't split up Franklin Christian, Franklin Classical. You don't split that up. And obviously Riverside, Webb, and Swanee make no sense to come to the North. So you bring Lancaster up to the North, and I drive around all day long. And you know what? The way my company works, I'm always going to Manchester. I'm going to Shelbyville. I mean, I'm going all over the place. Webb to Swanee, 45 minutes. Those places to Riverside, an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Those places to Franklin, about an hour. So, the travel really is not as bad as everyone wants to paint it out to be. The drive to Sacred Heart is going to be tough for anybody. I mean, it just is. But it's going to be even more so tough for a team like a Bowling Green Christian or Christian Community or the Tennessee Heat. It's crazy to me that you're going to penalize one division because you're trying to make it fair, but on the other hand, you're making it to where it's not fair, because you're making one division who they're kind of close together within 2 hours, right about. But it's crazy to me that they would say, okay, well, now we're going to de facto punish you. And I know they're not going to say that they're punishing, but it's crazy that they would punish them by making them drive to Jackson, as opposed to leaving it for teams who don't even have to get on the interstate, and they can go an hour and a half or 2 hours over to Jackson. It's crazy to me. Will it ever change? I don't think so. I really don't. But that doesn't mean that it should not change. I think it should.
So why not just move Lancaster to the north and Sacred Heart to the south? Why not just switch those around, and that way it's feasibly balanced? Because that way teams like Bowling Green, Christian Community, South Haven, they have to travel a little bit more than Antioch or Bowling Green. Why not just switch around Lancaster and Sacred Heart?
I agree with that, because from Bowling Green to Smyrna, you're still looking at about an hour and a half drive. Whereas, and I'm trying to pull it up as we speak, Um, Bowling Green to Smyrna, and White House to Smyrna, Springfield to Smyrna. It's gonna be crazy to. It would be crazy to have teams drive that far, but I think it would help with the distance. And like I said, I'm a proponent of spreading out these teams and readjusting the divisions. But like I said, I don't see it happening because before all of this stuff went down, now it is 3 hours from Swanee to Jackson, so it's going to be a little of a drive for anybody in the conference. But it's been like this for a few years, and I don't see it changing. But it should change. And Sacred Heart, there is zero reason they should be in the North.
Yeah, and again, like we said when we interviewed Tim last week, he said he didn't remember the specific discussions of why that happened, but he said the likely reason was just to replace Hendersonville for dropping out. So any reason for why they changed that is as good as anybody else's. But at this point, because of the season only about 3 weeks out, it's too late to make a feasible change on that. All right, next question for you. Obviously, we know you're a big proponent of the coin toss being deeper down in the tie-breaking procedures, and obviously, everybody has their opinions on it. But aside from the tiebreakers, what bylaw changes would you like to see occur in MTAC?
Well, the other night, I was laying in bed, with my bedtime reading, the MTAC bylaws, kind of like you read the Apple terms and conditions for your bedtime reading. And I was scrolling through, just, browsing and trying to hit some pointers and stuff. And two things really jumped out at me. And it's two issues that came up last year that were brought up. And they're things that I have questions about. The bylaws, they're solid. They're solid. But there's a couple things like addressing the suspension rules. An issue that came up a couple times last year was a player would get kicked out of a game, and there were a couple games in specific, but a player would get kicked out of a game, and the officials would eject him, whether it be on a one-strike basis or if he was warned and then something happened again. So the player would be ejected, and the rules state that you can appeal the ejection and try to get it overturned. And that happened almost every time with every suspension. There was an exception at the end of the year. It was a crazy situation when CCS played FCA. CCS had a player get ejected for something that he well should have gotten ejected for. I think he ended up stomping on a player or stepping on a player. It was uncalled for, and he should have gotten ejected. But come the next upcoming week, it came out that now the league has suspended a different player, and they will allow the initial player who was ejected to play. And come to find out, the second player who was suspended, if you go back and watch the film, and it's on our film, when you're watching a certain play that happened, and the guy that got ejected on that play, if you watch the backside of the play, you'll see this player take a swing at another player, and any qualifiers out the window, that's unacceptable. But I will hope the league can kind of rectify the situation. There was another one earlier in the year, about halfway through the year, where players ejected from a game and for a motion. It wasn't middle finger or anything. They called it showboating, and they kicked him out. And then the very next week, he was right back in the game. And I hope the league can address this because, and maybe this will help with the officiating meeting will help rectify some of this. But you cannot continue to second guess your officials. Now, granted, if the officials come back and say, you know what, we were a little harsh, we shouldn't have done this, that's one thing. But to continually question officials and say, well, I don't think that you should have made this call, and to overturn the call they made and the ruling they made, I think that's something that the league has to look at, because then you only look at officials as people who run the game, not as authority figures or people who know what they're talking about. And parents, and that bleeds over to parents and fans. So that's something I hope the league addresses and takes a closer look at, the suspension rules and how they handle those suspensions. Something else that I hope the league looks at is there was a rule that was passed that in JV contests, if the coaches and court, and this may not be for football as much as it is for maybe another sport, maybe like a baseball or something like that. But if the coaches and athletic directors agree and the right people agree that juniors can be allowed to play JV football. And I think this is an insane rule. It's one that should not have gotten passed. Because in what situation, if you don't have enough players for a JV team, then you should not have a JV team. I'm not a proponent of hurting players and penalizing players by taking games away. But I do think that when you have a potentially 17-year-old kid going up against what could be a 14-year-old kid, if you've got a team with a JV team and they decide to let's say, a sixth grader play, that sixth grader is only going to be 12 or 13, one of the two. And then you're going to have let's say a 12-year-old. You're going to have a 12-year-old going up against a 17-year-old junior. And obviously coaches, if that situation came up and the coaches are talking and that came up, that wouldn't happen. But on the outside chance that they overlook it and they let it happen, I think this could be disastrous. And so I think the league needs to revisit this rule. I would be interested to find out what the reasoning was that it was proposed and passed, because it's an insane rule, and it's something that I don't agree with at all in any sport. I'm a very big proponent of keep grades with each other. I don't think that any kid less than really fifth grade should be allowed to play middle school. I think middle school should only be fifth through eighth grade, and at that fifth grader's risk, obviously. But I definitely would not let a fifth grader in a JV game. It's just insane. So I think it's crazy that they would allow juniors to participate in JV contests, and I would strongly encourage the league to revisit that rule and rethink that rule.
I think part of now I do have a follow-up question for the suspensions, but just to give, I don't normally give my piece as much on this, but I have a little bit of perspective as to why I think they implemented that rule. I believe it was back in 2015 football season. There was a junior varsity game between Franklin Christian Academy and South Haven. There's a JV game, and this was during the year. This was South Haven's first year in the league when their varsity team went winless. Just basically, they didn't have any W's after being national champions and everything. So it was a bit rebuilding year, and because of their injury bug, they played basically the JV team for FCA was 5th, 6th, and 7th graders, and their JV team was freshmen, sophomores primarily, and some 8th graders. And I think they passed this rule. I know fully well I could be wrong, but I think it stemmed a little bit from this game, because I think that some of the players, I think part of it is this. I saw this at FCA all the time, and I'm sure that other schools have their practices with it as well. But I saw this particularly at FCA all the time, where they have varsity and junior varsity teams, and those junior varsity teams are mostly loaded, with players who are either leaders for their freshman or sophomore class, but they have juniors and seniors ahead of them who are priority to get playing time, or it's full of juniors and seniors who haven't stepped up and haven't proven that they're varsity level. So I think that's why they passed that junior rule, is because there are schools that have juniors who should be able to be on varsity, but they may not reach that level yet, whether it's because they haven't put in the work to train hard enough, whether it's that they don't have the skill, whether it's anything like that. I think that's part of it, is that that they're allowing juniors to potentially do JV because of that. That's just my piece on it, and I know fully well.
Yeah, I don't know about that because first off, a situation that came up in one game, you don't create a rule out of it because obviously that's the exception. It's not the standard of something that's happening over and over and over again. But if you have a junior who has not gotten to the level to play on the varsity team and he's not getting play time at all, there's no reason to put a younger child's health and well-being at risk just so that this 17-year-old can get some playing time against a kid that he could probably pick up and bench press. So that's just my take.
Now, in terms of the suspension regulations that you said you wanted the league to relook at, I know how much you don't really talk about the NFL as much. You're not a huge fan of it, but
nope.
Why not do the 2 personal fouls and then your ejected rule? Why don't we put that in at the high school level? So that, well, I mean, the NFL rule right now, to my knowledge, I think they changed it for this season. They may have last season. They started out with personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct, 2 of those and you're ejected, and then I think they moved it to part of the commissioner's thing on that was he was a proponent of 2 personal fouls and it should be an ejection. Why don't we do that in MTAC? Why don't we do that in 8-man football? 2 personal fouls and you're ejected. Why don't we just move to that so that ejections are not I guess part of it is that unless it is a blatant disrespect to a referee, like contacting an official, disrespecting an official, and unless it's blatant, why not just give the player 1 personal foul, and then if he continues does something else, another personal foul, eject him, so that way there's more of a layer to potentially preventing a reversal of the ejection because it was 2 things that were built up.
There has to be a standard established because you're going to have officiating crews who are different. You're going to have officiating crews who are very touchy and very and it's not even just with players. It's there's coaches that officials will throw flags on if they open their mouth, and you're going to have different officiating crews act differently. But then you're also going to have kids that let's say you've got a senior who's played for the same team for 4 years. And, yeah, he's a little mouthy, but he's been around. He's a generally good kid. He just tends to pop off his mouth a little bit or do something he shouldn't. And let's say they have an officiating crew who's been around for about 4 years, or the referee has been around for 4 years, or someone on that crew has been, and they happen to know that kid, and they've met before and interacted before. So sometimes you're going to have a crew who might let players get away with a little bit more, as opposed to a crew who is a little more sensitive. Maybe it's their first game and they really want to bring the hammer down and they want to, set the tone. And so they are very, very touchy about it. I just think they've met before, I think there has to be a set standard. And again, that officiating meeting is really going to help out with communication and establishing where everyone is and where everyone needs to be.
Yeah, that officiating meeting for sure is going to help address some of those things, and I'm sure that that Ronnie Perkins will definitely get some of those stuff hammered out with the coaches and such. But fully well that everybody knows fully well that the coaches specifically, they look at all their players in the beginning of the season, and some of them have to be reminded continually, but he tells them, but every coach will tell their players, the high school level, don't talk to the refs. Don't say anything. If you don't like a call, you don't like any of that stuff, just keep your mouth shut. Just don't say anything. We'll handle it. If you have a complaint, you can talk to me, and potentially they'll talk to the ref. And coaches will even admit that they're bad at sometimes too. They think a call is wrong, and they'll get in the referees' faces. But that's why the coaches, they tell all their players all the time, just don't talk to the refs because we don't want a problem. That's just where it comes from. But you're right. There'll be some players that are mouthy. You can't always prevent it, but hopefully going forward, that officiating conference will bring some more clarity and consistency for 8-man football all around. So I got one more question for you on this skip the sensitivity portion. We've been seeing it a lot on our social media posts, and we've been seeing it, throughout players we've interacted with and things that have happened, but the rivalry is still really heated between South Haven and Christian community. And a major part of that stems from the championship, but it kind of, I believe it started more when they joined the conference, and that's their championship season when they face each other. It's just kind of lingered and continued from that, and it just was accelerated because of the way the championship match went down and how high stakes it was, and how many people thought there were questionable calls on both sides, that kind of thing. But the rivalry is intense, and it's still going on. And you'll be at least addressing it on your second episode of Extreme Talk, but kind of give us a little bit of a preview of what you're planning to talk about.
I am at the center of this. I'm not in the center, but I am way too familiar with this rivalry. I'm very familiar with each of the schools. Obviously, one is my alma mater, and I go to church at the other school. I go to church at the church that's associated with the other school, and I live in the town where one of the schools is, and I've known people from both sides. I'm right in the middle of it, and for me, it's gotten to let's just skip the sensitivity. It's gotten to a stupid level. It really has. If you talk to people who have graduated, some people who have graduated from each side, a lot of them have dropped the issues. I've talked to Xavier Vincent from South Haven, and him and Isaiah Webb communicate regularly. And obviously they're both going up to Austin P to try to walk onto the team. I think Isaiah is going to try to walk onto the team, or I know Isaiah is. I think Xavier is, but it's gotten to a ridiculous level where people are calling each other garbage, and I'll talk about this a lot more on my podcast. I don't want to give a whole lot more away. Extreme Talk, it'll come out when we say it'll come out. It's just gotten ridiculous. I mean, if anything else, if y'all can't treat each other like human beings, remember that you're both supposed to be Christian schools, and people see that and people know that. And when you don't act accordingly, you make yourself look ridiculous, and that's in all aspects. Social media, it's gotten stupid. There's been a lot of stupid stuff on social media, and I'm sick of it. I'm all for rivalries. I love rivalries. I live for Rivalry Week. I love it. But there comes a point that it has to stop. And you have to be adults about it, and you have to leave the past in the past. And that's part of the reason they didn't play each other for several years. Was there was an incident at a basketball game, and things went bad, and so they just didn't interact with each other. And then the year before they came into the conference, or maybe 2 years, I think they played each other for a couple of years, and then South Haven joined the conference, and obviously they got to start playing each other again. And there's been a lot of people who've gone back and forth, some people who have gone from South Haven to CCS, and from CCS to South Haven, and back and forth. And so it's kind of bred this whole rivalry and built this whole rivalry. And it's ridiculous. And I'm calling out people on my podcast. I'm calling out situations on my podcast, and we're going to get personal, and we're going to get in depth about it. And several people might not like me, but it is what it is. And just some of the stuff that's being talked about, I'm calling for an end to it. Just for the simple fact of being human to each other and being adults. So being mature about it. So there you go.
Yeah, I think a big part of the rivalry of why it got started. A guy who graduated from CCS said 2-6 for 2017. I think
All
that's
right,
what started it.
listen. I got asked from a person at South Haven for my prediction. I did not volunteer it.
Yeah, no, you volunteered your predictions. Like at the beginning of the season last year, you gave predictions for every team. You said 2-6.
I was asked.
You still gave your predictions. It doesn't matter whether you were asked or not. But I think that's where the big rivalry started. It's where 2-6, and that was from a CCS alma mater. That's probably where it actually started. That's why you say you're at the center of it all.
Yeah, sort of.
Yep, that's probably where it facetiously started. All right, well, that'll end this week's portion of Extreme Radio presented by GracePointe Healthcare. Go to GracePointeHealthcare.com, book your appointment online. If you mention you're from 8-Man Extreme, you get $20 off your new patient office visit fee. GracePointe Healthcare, modern medicine the old-fashioned way. Just some housekeeping to let you guys know. I will not be on the show next week. James will be heading that up with whichever other guests he has on. I will be on vacation with a friend of mine, so I will not be on the show next week, so that you're not all surprised about that. But yeah, James will be heading it up. But after that, it'll be full swing for football. We'll be fully getting into it. I know that next week I won't be on, but I'll of course be at the coaches forum the following Saturday. Then we'll have the Extreme Radio after that to recap the Jamborees and go over that stuff. But yeah, next week I won't be on the show, so that's why you won't hear my voice from there. But aside from that, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for tuning into Extreme Radio. It's always great to have you guys in here. We will start probably 2 weeks' time, maybe 3 weeks' time. We will start allowing for people to join into the show and give their opinions. We'll do maybe a 10 or 15-minute segment where people can join in. We'll give the link to our communication server, Discord, where we use our voice communication from. And we'll give you all the opportunity to voice your opinions, voice what you want to say. We think that'll be a really great portion for not just us, but to get opinions aside from our own thoughts and such about going forward with the season. But aside from that, thanks again for tuning into Extreme Radio this week. I won't be here next week, but we'll have a new radio show for the following week. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week.
See ya!